You know what's funny about progress? It usually smells like shit. We like to tell ourselves that humanity moves forward because of big, noble ideas. Liberty, discovery, the pursuit of happiness. But if you actually look at the gears of history, they aren't greased with noble intentions. They're greased with the things we're too embarrassed to talk about. Boredom, greed, and the absolute bone-deep fear of dying in the dirt. In the mid-1800s, people weren't just dying, they were rotting from the inside out. If you lived in a city like London or New York, you were essentially living in a giant petri dish of human waste and industrial filth. But people are adaptable creatures. You get used to the smell, you get used to the grime. What you don't get used to is the silence when someone you love stops breathing because of a disease no one can name. Today, we're going to talk about a man who didn't want to save the world. He just wanted to save his own skin, make a buck, and maybe, if he had time, figure out why everyone was dropping dead. He was a man who lived a lie so long it became a multi-billion-dollar truth. This is Hindsight. Meet Joseph. It's the 1860s and Joseph is a surgeon. Now, forget everything you know about modern hospitals. In Joseph's time, a hospital was basically a morgue with a waiting list. Surgeons didn't wash their hands. Why would they? They thought miasma, basically bad air or a wicked smell, caused infections. Joseph would walk from an autopsy covered in the blood and bile of a corpse and go straight into a delivery room to help a woman give birth. He'd wipe his hands on a filthy apron that was stiff with the gore of a dozen other patients. He thought it made him look experienced. In reality, he was a goddamn walking death sentence. At the Royal Infirmary in Glasgow, the mortality rate in the surgical wards was nearly 50%. If you went under the knife, you had a coin flip's chance of never waking up. Not because the surgery failed, but because hospital gangrene would eat your limbs within 48 hours. Joseph was obsessed. He watched his patients turn black and rot while they were still screaming in their beds. He was tired of being a butcher. He started reading the work of a French chemist, a guy who claimed that tiny, invisible germs were the real killers. Joseph's colleagues thought he was a lunatic. Germs? Little invisible monsters? It sounded like a fairy tale for people who were afraid of the dark. But Joseph didn't care. He started experimenting with a chemical used to treat stinky sewage, carbolic acid. He began spraying it everywhere, on the wounds, on the tools, in the air. He smelled like a chemical fire, but guess what? His patients stopped dying. Now, you'd think the world would throw Joseph a parade. Nope. The medical establishment hated him. They didn't want to hear that they had been killing their patients with dirty hands for decades. But while the doctors were busy arguing, a pair of brothers in America were watching. They weren't doctors. They were businessmen. They saw Joseph's success with carbolic acid and thought, there's money in this. They created a liquid inspired by Joseph's work. They wanted something that could kill germs but wouldn't melt your skin off like pure carbolic acid. They marketed it as a surgical antiseptic. For years, it was a niche product used by professionals. It was boring. It was functional. It wasn't making them fuck you levels of money. By the 1920s, the company was struggling. The original miracle was sitting on shelves gathering dust. They needed a hook. They needed to find a problem that people didn't know they had and then sell them the cure. So they went digging through old Latin medical texts. They found an obscure term, halitosis. Up until that point, bad breath was just breath. It was something that happened if you ate onions or didn't scrub your teeth with a rag. It wasn't a condition. It certainly wasn't a social catastrophe. The company launched an ad campaign that changed the world. They didn't sell the liquid, they sold shame. They showed pictures of beautiful women being ignored by men because of their unpleasant breath. They coined the phrase, "often a bridesmaid, never a bride." They made people terrified that they were walking around with a secret, disgusting medical condition called halitosis. It was a brilliant, cynical lie, and the world swallowed it whole. Suddenly, the surgical antiseptic wasn't for doctors anymore. It was for everyone. If you wanted a job, you needed it. If you wanted a date, you needed it. If you didn't want to be a social pariah, you needed to gargle with a chemical cocktail every single morning. The company exploded. They moved from the operating room to the bathroom cabinet. They took the terrifying reality of Victorian filth, the actual germs that were killing people in Joseph's ward, and turned it into a weaponized form of social anxiety. They made us afraid of our own bodies so they could sell us a bottle of flavored alcohol and water. Joseph eventually got his due. He was knighted. He became a lord. He's remembered as the father of modern surgery. But the irony is that his name isn't spoken in operating rooms nearly as much as it's spoken in front of the bathroom mirror by people who are worried about their breath before a big meeting. Joseph didn't want to make you fresh. He wanted to make you live. But the machine of the 20th century decided that your social life was more profitable than your survival. We live in a world obsessed with hygiene, but we rarely think about the blood and rot that birthed it. We owe our lives to a man who looked at a gangrenous wound and saw a solution in a bottle of sewage cleaner. But we also owe our deepest insecurities to the marketing geniuses who took that man's name and used it to make us feel like our natural state was a condition that needed fixing. The surgeon's name was Joseph Lister. And the bottle of miracle liquid on your counter? That's Listerine. Next time you feel that burn in the back of your throat, remember, it was designed to stop a surgeon from killing you. Now it's just making sure you don't offend the guy in the elevator. I'm your host, and this is Hindsight, because history is never just what's on the page.